Whether you're new to sewing or a seasoned pro, I'm sure that at some point on your journey, you've wandered down the aisles of quilting cotton at your local fabric store and marveled at all of the fun prints and colors that it comes in. You may have thought to yourself that you're not quite ready to make a quilt and wondered, what else can I make with quilting cotton? Is it suitable for clothing too? And those are the questions that we're going to answer today, but don't forget to stay until the end of the video where we're also going to talk about how fabrics are measured and some quilting cotton specific measurements that can be a little tricky if you haven't been exposed to them yet. All right, you guys, it's time to get down to business. Today we're talking all about quilting cotton, and as the name implies, this is a 100% cotton fabric. It's usually 44 to 45 inches wide. It's a plain weave, and it is prone to shrinking, so I definitely wash it before you start sewing with it. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to any fabric, but especially quilting cotton, is that the fabric can vary in quality dramatically from company to company. The quilting cotton that you buy at big box stores or chain fabric stores is going to be a much lower quality than those from smaller fabric companies that curate their fabrics a little bit more intentionally. There is going to be a price difference here, but generally speaking, if you're paying a little bit more for your quilting cotton, you are going to get a higher quality fabric. Something else to keep in mind is that there are different substrates used for quilting cotton. Some are more of this lightweight cotton poplin style, which is a little bit smoother and it's going to drape a little bit more than ones like this that are more of a broadcloth style cotton. It's going to be a little bit thicker, slightly rougher to the touch, still very soft and nice, but it's just a little bit different. It's going to have a little bit less drape, and you can even see now this one is not draping as much as this one. So this is going to be your cotton poplin style. Some companies that sell this style of quilting cotton are Art Gallery Fabrics, Birch Organics, oh gosh, Ruby Star Society. We carry all of those at Thrifty Notion. And then this one is one of the older prints from Cotton and Steel. We have a few of those as well, but this is also similar in weight to Kona cotton. So if you've interacted with that, that's going to be what this is more similar to. So you can see the difference in drape now, but once these are pre-washed, there's going to be an even bigger difference in drape, and that will impact your quilts, but it will also impact anything else you make with quilting cotton. And that'll come into play a little bit later when we talk about other things that quilting cotton is good for. All right, so now we're diving into the nitty-gritty a little bit. We've talked about what quilting cotton is, so you're probably wondering what makes quilting cotton different than other 100% cotton, plain weave apparel fabrics. The main differences between these fabrics is that quilting cotton is usually going to be a little bit more crisp, have less drape, and not be quite as soft as most lightweight apparel cotton fabrics. So one example would be cotton shirtings. And again, this is one of those categories that can vary dramatically from manufacturer to manufacturer. There isn't really a standard for what a shirting should be. It can mean a lot of different things, and sometimes they even have a twill weave instead of a plain weave. So this is still kind of complicated. But the reason this matters is because a commonly used fabric for shirts, for like button-up shirts, is cotton poplin, which is what I showed you earlier when we talked about this fabric. The reason I like cotton poplin for apparel, not only because it's a fabric that's already used in the apparel industry, is also because it does have that drape. It is a little bit more fine, a little bit smoother. So when it wrinkles, which all cotton fabrics will, the wrinkles will fall out a little bit easier. They won't be quite as crisp and they won't stay as long. There are a few things that I would stay away from personally when making clothing with quilting cotton, but keep in mind that this is all up to personal preference. So the first thing that I would stay away from when making something out of quilting cotton would be something with a billowy bodice. So I'm thinking like something with a loose bodice that goes into an elasticized waist. That I wouldn't recommend with quilting cotton because it's going to balloon out from your body and it's not going to have the flow that you want for that area. Something I would recommend when working with quilting cotton is working with patterns that have fitting techniques like darts, pleats, or gathers that will take in the excess fabric and accentuate the shape of your body. Another thing that looks great with quilting cotton is full gathered skirts. They can be so beautiful because quilting cotton will kind of hold its shape and hold out from the body more. And this is one case where I would actually recommend working with the heavier weight quilting cotton because it's going to hold that shape even more than a cotton poplin would. But again, if you're into a more sleek silhouette, that's where the cotton poplin would come in handy. So that's just a few tips. There are a lot more. So if you are really interested in making clothing with quilting cotton, if you're into all the really fun, bright novelty prints that quilting cotton comes in and you really want some clothes made out of that, I'm going to link a few other blog posts from different creators and resources down below that I find helpful and that I think might help you as well. And it's interesting because some of them give different advice, and so you can get kind of different sides of the coin and see what other people think and take what information will apply to you and your personal style. So maybe you don't feel ready to tackle a quilt and you're not really into novelty prints for your clothing, but you really want to make use of some of these quilting cottons. Some other projects that would be great for quilting cotton are things like purses, wallets, pot holders, and other crafty items. These can be so good for using quilting cotton because you can buy smaller pieces of quilting cotton from various brands and familiarize yourself with them and find out which ones you like the best. And you can also be exposed to a lot of different types of interfacing and techniques in these projects, especially if you're making things like wallets and bags, because most of the time they don't rely on the fabric for having the structure. They're going to be using various kinds of interfacing for providing the structure for those projects. And there's so many different kinds of interfacing out there. So I think these projects, if you're into the craftier things, can be so good for just educating yourself and learning and exposing yourself to all different things. So I definitely recommend looking into some of those craft projects if you are wanting to sew with more of your quilting cotton. Last but not least, let's talk about how fabrics are measured. I'm in the US, so we use yards, which is 36 inches. If you're in another country, you may use meters, but either way, the concept is generally the same. When you go to have your fabric cut, you can have it cut in multiples of yards, like 1 yard, 2 yards, 5 yards, or you can have it cut in yardage increments, like quarters, thirds, sometimes even eighths. So when we're talking about quilting, a lot of times people want a lot of variety in their quilts. They want a lot of different fabrics, a lot of different prints, and so they're going to be buying smaller pieces of fabric. But sometimes eighth and quarter yards just aren't the right size. They're very long and skinny cuts, and they aren't conducive to cutting out certain quilt blocks or showing off some larger scale prints. So an alternative to this that is usually only cut from quilting cotton are fat quarters and fat eighths. So instead of quartering the yard into increments of that 36 inches, we're going to be cutting that yard into true quarters. So to cut a fat quarter, you're going to cut a half yard of fabric and then cut that half yard down the center fold. There's also sometimes an option for fat eighths, and these are often sold in pre-cut packs, but there are two variations here. When you cut a fat eighth, you're going to cut a fat quarter first and then cut the fat quarter down the middle. So depending on which way it's cut, fat eighths can either be 18 by 11 inches or 22 by 9. So that's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions or suggestions for this series, as always, please leave them down below, and I'll see you next time. Happy sewing!